The Chinese history has a 4,500-year unbroken record. But you know what? The Chinese history stretches until 2,500 BC.
Now I'm going to cut this video up because it's very long, but that man started out with a lie. And that's a good technique when you want to convince people that the ancient Chinese people were talking about a Jesus before they even knew that they was talking about a Jesus. And the way you do it is to start out with a lie. And the first lie that this man just told is that ancient Chinese history goes back 4,500 years and is unbroken during that time frame. Now, the reason why he picked 2500 BCE is because it would then be able to line up with the Noah story if you start their history at the time frame to which Noah's flood supposedly happened. But what archaeology says and what actual Chinese history says is that the people of that area had been around much, much longer. The first signs of Homo erectus was about 1.2 to 1.7 million years ago. Peking man, which is definitely Homo erectus, was 700,000 to 400,000 years ago. After that, you still have around 10,000 BCE, so this is after the Younger Dryas flood, well, after the Younger Dryas flood freeze, you had the first accounts of agriculture being used, and at around 8,000 BCE, which is definitely after the Younger Dryas flood, and around the same time frame as Göbekli Tepe, you had the first cultivation of rice farming in and around the Yellow River. So their history, unbroken, goes back way further. What he's starting with is more than likely with the Zhai dynasty, and that's where he's trying to start their history, which might be technically correct because we're talking about modern day China, but you had people who developed into that modern day China that were already in existence long before he started this story. So he starts out with a lie in order to force this Christian narrative to fit everything he's about to say.
Now, Taoism came about 6 BC.
道教大概是公元前6世纪来的。
About the 5th BC, you have Confucianism, and you have, I spelled wrongly, Buddhism.
而大概在公元第5世纪的时候，有儒家跟佛教出现。
So the big question is, what about those 2,000 years?
问题就在这中间2000多年呢。
Before Taoism, Confucianism, and Buddhism, what did the Chinese people believe in?
在道教、儒家、佛教出现之前，华人相信的是什么？
What is interesting is this: we have very clear historical records.
很有意思的，我们有非常清楚的历史记录在。
For the first 2,000 years of their history, the Chinese people worship a singular supreme God and not many dozens or millions of deities.
在
Now, there is also a song found in the collected statues of the Ming Dynasty. Now, let me translate it for you.
这个要为大家解释一下了。
Of the old in the beginning, there was a great chaos without form and dark.
在创造之初，一切是混沌灰暗的。
The 5 planets have not begun to revolve, nor the 2 lights to shine.
5颗行星尚未运转，那2个光体也未照亮。
In the midst of it, there existed neither form nor sound.
在这当中，既无声响，也无形体。
You, O spiritual sovereign, came forth in your sovereignty and first did separate the impure from the pure.
而主权之神呐、唯有你出来判断所有清浊之分。
Now notice the order. You make heaven, you make earth, you make man. All things became alive with reproducing power.
注意它的顺序哦，你立了天，立了地，创造人，使这一切万物生生不息。
Turn your Bible with me to Genesis chapter 1 and verse 1.
跟我一起翻开创世纪第1章第1。
Oh, hell no. I'm not going to punish y'all with the rest of the lies that this man is going to start telling. Just this initial lie right here is enough. The fact that he's saying that the Ming Dynasty, that they have records that shows a correlation to the Genesis story to what the Ming Dynasty story told, and that they didn't worship multiple deities prior to that, is a bold-faced lie. So what he's doing is he is not accepting the fact that in that area that which and all the different groups of people who make up the eventual Chinese people, you had multiple creation stories based on their folklore mythologies, their folklore religions, that just like in the Levant, you had different groups of people who had different stories. You had the same thing going on in China. You had the same thing going on all over the world. So he's taking the Hung Hoon, and I'm probably saying some of these names wrong, the Hung Hoon story, which is similar to your Genesis story, that there was chaos, and out of the chaos, this God created the earth and then animals and then people, which actually the Genesis story go back and forth with that depending upon Genesis 1 and Genesis 2 as to which one was created first between humans and people. I mean, humans and animals. But he's taken just the one group story and saying that that is what all the people believe. When the Pangu people actually had more of a Mesopotamian story where a heavenly deity was disembodied to create the earth and everything, kind of like the Mesopotamian story of Marduk killing Tiamat and utilizing the body of Tiamat to create the earth, and the rest of her body becomes the bracelet, the asteroid belt. And then there's another one, which is of another folklore story from the Fugzai, and which is about Fugzai and Nuhawa. I'm saying that name wrong, where these two heavenly couples got together and birthed out all the other deities and birthed out what would become the earth and the 5 planets that they was observable to those people. And they had a more astrological, God-centered creation story. So this Singaporean man who is bastardizing the Chinese language and people story to make it fit into Christianity. And why is he doing this? Because in the 1824, Singapore became a British colony crown state. And as they conquered with guns, they then conquered with missionaries. And then these missionaries converted the Singaporean people into Christianity, and England held them as a crown state until 1968, I believe, or 58 or 59. And then 1958 or 59 is when they became a sovereign nation. So they were held under British rule, forced into Christianity. So therefore, these people are now trying to force it. He goes on to talk about how the writings of the language identify how they slaughtered a lamb by using a spear, that meant they were talking about Jesus, and how the language uses the sun and the symbol of the blood and a cross, which is an X, that represented Jesus. And he's forcibly making the Singaporean people, who are a combination of Chinese, Malaysian, and Indian people, fit into this Christian narrative that his ancestors were forced into believing. This is what people do. Once they have been indoctrinated into a religion, they then force historical narratives to fit into the religion. This is why we study. This is why we walk away from this religion, because we see how people will bastardize their own history, ignore their own history, take away their own people and ancestors' greatness, and force it to fit into this narrative. It's as important for us to understand that as that damn ambulance that's going down the street. That's how much of an emergency it is for us to always maintain truth and knowing over belief. So y'all have a great day. And remember always, you have to free yourself to be yourself, because your greatness is non-negotiable. Good journey, good vibrations.